What's going on, YouTube? Levi of Old Iron Off-Road back out here today on the Ultimate 800 Crawler project. We're to a point in the build where we need to start thinking about and planning for wiring, and that's what we're going to be working on today. If you flash back to the roll cage episode, you actually saw me put this center console in. I think I mentioned in that video what we were going to be using that for. Now, for this build, I want a super simple wiring setup. I want super simple switches. I don't want an overly complicated wiring setup. So with that in mind, we picked up an American Auto Wire Route 9 circuit universal wiring kit. Now this should handle the bulk of our basic needs as far as cranking, ignition power sources, a couple of basic accessories, and turn signals, lights, and whatnot. Now, anything further as far as wiring requirements for this vehicle, I am going to control them with some sort of either a Switch Pro setup or some sort of relay center with one of the little digital switch pads. There's a bunch of different ones. There's Auxbeam, there's S-Pods, there's Switch Pros. There's all kinds of them out there, but that's what we'll be using for everything else. The idea for this is to keep it super simple, super clean, and everything really accessible. So with that in mind, we have the 9-circuit setup, and we also have some switch panels from Joe's Racing. We've got a main battery disconnect. We've got an ignition on switch. We've got a start button. Just trying to keep this really clean and simple. And another part of the thought process behind this center console is to have everything within a very short reach of the driver, me, when I am harnessed completely in. We're going to have a battery disconnect so I can kill the entire vehicle if I need to. We're going to have our ignition and accessory switches within just a short reach. If you're ever on your lid, you don't want to be struggling to be able to shut everything off. If I want to kill the entire electrical system, all I have to do is reach up into the center console, hit a battery disconnect. If I want to shut the vehicle off, all I have to do is reach up and hit the ignition kill switch. I want everything really conveniently packaged. And that is what we are going to be working on today. We're going to get this center console laid out with our switches. We're going to get the fuse panel mounted, and we will probably route in our headlight and our tail light harnesses. We'll see how far we get on all that. I'm sure the wiring side of this build is going to be kind of an ongoing thing, but I figured we would just go ahead and dive into it and get to the meat and taters of this portion of the build. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we blasted out this piece of aluminum, and I actually kind of sat in the vehicle on a bucket and just made sure where I kind of wanted everything as far as what would be within my reach. Now, the first switch panel we have is a Joe's switch panel, and we're going to actually change these switches out. These are just a single pole switch, but what we're actually going to change out on a few of them is going to be an on, off, on switch. So left turn signal will be up, right turn signal will be down, center will be off. Wipers, center off will be park, up will be low or high, down will be low. I think we have another one that I was going to have to put on a 3-way. And then these will end up being something I'm not really sure what we're going to do with the other two. Big main high amperage battery disconnect that we can kill everything. If we want to kill the entire electrical system, we'll be able to do it from here. And then we have our basic ignition, and we're going to make this an accessory switch with our push button start in the middle. So that should be really clean and tidy. And then we also have this sidewinder shifter flush mount that we're going to have to get mounted for the 4L80. Now this is a reverse pattern, and it is called a rock gate because there is no gate stopping you from going from first directly to reverse. If you're ever in a hairy situation, you need to click reverse real quick. Right there it is. So we're actually going to get this put in there too. I'm not sure. I do know we are going to also need provisions for our transfer case shifter in here. We're going to use some JB Fab cable shifters and a flush mount setup for that. I have not yet ordered it. But for now, I think the next step is we need to get some holes cut out in this, and we need to lay out our switch panels. Once we get our switch panels installed in here, we can put this plate back in here, we can mount the wiring harness, and then we can kind of start figuring out where everything needs to be ran to and where everything needs to be connected to. So let's blast some holes in this guy and let's get a couple of these mounted up. So I think we're gonna start with this shifter first. And if you're not familiar with these, this is a Winner's shifter, and these are probably, I would say, the best shifter on the market. There's no like weird levers or detents. They don't jam, they don't hang up. If you've ever used any other kind of shifter, aftermarket shifter, they're weird. They've got weird operation things that you have to do from going from drive to reverse. You've got to wiggle your nose and wiggle your ear and blink your eye 4 times before it'll go into reverse. Same to be said with park, so they're really finicky. So this one is just a pretty simple detent ball that clicks left or right and allows you to pull through the gears. I'm gonna use this hole for one of the location holes on this guy, so I just need to figure out where exactly. I really don't know what square is either, so that's gonna kind of suck. Yeah, that's gonna suck. We'll figure it out. Hard to see what's going on for the glare, but we've got that all mocked up, and I think I'm happy with the placement of everything. Let's get it in the vehicle and get everything kind of positioned. Make sure everything looks straight, actually sitting from the driver's seat and nothing's kind of running on an angle. Get this dude bolted down and make sure we're happy with the position on everything. Went ahead and clecoed one corner in, that way I can still pivot these if I need to get them to line up. But I think where I had them was pretty close. Let's go ahead and slip our shifter in there too. I'm happy with that. It looks pretty darn good. Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, I dig that. Pretty happy with where that's headed. Let me see if I can climb in here, get these lined up straight, and get them clecoed in. Trying to get a calculated eyeball on this. Got to make sure these are straight. That right there. I believe we'll just leave these clecoed in there for the time being too. That way we can kind of tighten everything up while we're wiring. That needs to turn just a little. Boy, we tighten that down good. Hey, you still watching? If you're still watching, take 2 seconds to reach down there and hit the subscribe button. It really helps us out. Thanks. No, that looks really good. I'm super happy with that. So obviously we've still got some more stuff that's going to end up going in here. Hopefully we still have room for the transfer case shifters. And I'm going to throw some cup holders back here. So we are running heat in this thing, and the plan is to add some diffusers down here that blow basically directly up on your side so that you'll stay nice and warm if you are out in cold weather. Looks good. So I feel like the next order of business is to get this fuse panel mounted. Just open it up, see what we're working with. Nice. Is that the turn signal module? Yeah. Huh. Grounded relay, yeah. So this flasher can, I was checking to see what this was. Horn relay, flasher relay. This is cool. This flasher relay is actually already grounded. So it should actually work for LEDs. Cool. For now, the only thing we need to focus on is getting this dude mounted. And I think for all intents and purposes, right there looks like a fantastic place to mount this. It's going to be an easy, clear view of me when I'm in the driver's seat. It's going to be easy to get to for service purposes, and it's going to be a nice, tight, short run to the back of our switches, so everything should look nice and clean. So we'll mark some holes on the firewall, and we will pop some riv nuts into the firewall, and we'll get this guy mounted up. All right, so we've got all of those wires dressed in and kind of routed to where they go. This is all of our fuse sources coming out of the fuse panel. Now the next part we need to address is this plug here, and this is actually going to be the plug that heats up the fuse panel via a battery source or our ignition switch or our accessory switch. So we have this plug here. See, our red wire is fed from our battery source, and I don't know why they're running a junction block. Oh, I guess you're not tying into the back of the ignition switch. So basically you've got power. Power is going to flow through our starter or battery, wherever we choose to hook it up. In our case, the battery cutoff. It's going to feed through here. Probably going to put a fuse in this circuit. Actually, we will. So battery gets from there, runs down this wire, hits our fuse panel, and that's going to heat up the battery side of our fuse panel. We've got another one that splits off here that feeds into the ignition switch, which in our case is going to be the back of our ignition and accessory switches. And then when we toggle on our ignition switch, it's going to heat up this dude. And then when we toggle on our accessory, it's going to heat up this dude. So hopefully that makes sense. And then where does this? They're running a coil feed straight off the key. Yes, they are running a coil feed straight off the key. So we're actually going to tail out another wire off of our ignition switch, and it's going to power the fuse panel on ignition side, and it's also going to heat up our fuel injection, which we'll talk more about that in another video. But let's get all this installed and routed where it needs to go. All right, so I think I'll go ahead and get a mega fuse mounted up here. That way I know where it's going to go. And I can actually go ahead and tie my battery feed to my disconnect. And then pretty much from there, the only thing I'll have to work out is running my battery cable in. So let's go to the parts store and get one. And parts store and miscellaneous crap, electrical stuff. We've got, ooh, actually I need one of these. These are USB charge plugs. We'll take one of those in with us. And made in China. Mega fuse holder, and I'm not sure what mega fuse that is, but we'll at least need the holder. We'll probably put that dude about right there. We'll actually need two of these because we'll have to fuse the charging circuit as well. So it is another day out here in the shop. I realized while we were working on the wiring, I was rambling along, sorting through wiring, and realized that the camera died. which is probably a good thing because I was actually getting a little bit ahead of myself as far as all the things that are going to need to be in this dash panel. Now, obviously, we're going to need to run some other gauges. The fuel injection that we're running has a really nice Pro Dash in it, and on the Pro Dash, we're going to be able to monitor AFR, voltage, water temp, and fuel pressure. And it'll also have obviously map and all that other stuff, which is going to be something like a vacuum boost gauge. But I do want to run some other standard gauges. And we're not going to get all fancy with the gauges. I actually really like for just basic gauges, the ISPRO stuff. ISPRO is a big name in the diesel world, and I run them a lot in the Scout build. So we've got a few of these guys going in. We're going to run trans temp, oil pressure, a water temperature gauge, because I would like another just standard water temp gauge as a backup in here so I can see if there's any deviations between the two. It's just a good redundancy on water temp is not going to hurt my feelings. Fuel pressure, or water temp, trans temp, oil pressure, and fuel. Obviously, we're going to want to know how much fuel that we have. There is a sending unit in the fuel cell. And we are also going to be running an Innovate Motorsports SCG1 solenoid boost controller. Now, this is a vacuum boost gauge, AFR gauge, all integrated into one, and it actually has software to control boost. Now, what this is going to allow us to do is monitor AFR. It will allow us boost cut and a couple of other parameters that you can preset. And basically it will act as a safety feature. Now we're going to run a minimum spring pressure we're going to run a 5 PSI spring in our gate. And what we can do with this guy is if for some reason we lose fuel pressure and the engine leans out or whatever other programmable boost cut safety features we want to add, this will actually cut boost and will revert to spring pressure. So instead of building 10 to 12 pounds, which we may cram 12 pounds down the throat of this engine. We'll see what it wants to handle. I think if we can get a good clean tune, I don't think 12 pounds will be out of the realm of okay. Maybe. We may end up knocking a ring land off of this thing. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, this will be somewhat of a safety net for our boosted engine. Now, since I've already alluded to fuel injection, let's go ahead and dig into what we're going to be running. I actually had a bunch of stuff show up the other day. So what we have here is a big old box of Aces EFI goodness. Now, I am not going to dig too much into this. I'll let you have a little sneak peek. That's all you get. We will actually go back and do a full unboxing and talk about all of the individual components one at a time when we unpackage it. But for now, let's just say that we have all of the goodness. We're going to be running the kill shot. We're going to be running the kill shot. We have their ceramic boot plug wires. We've got their entire fuel system stuff, fuel pressure gate, fuel pressure sending unit stuff, 3/8 feed and return. And their fuel system is really nice. It's not rubber. It's PTFE lined stuff. Really nice setup. Their harness, obviously, and a couple of other little goodies. We've got the 7-inch Pro Dash in there. Like I said, we will dig into that at a later date, and we will actually do a unboxing and an initial look at the entire system. I will say that previously we have ran Holley stuff. Now, and I'm not, this is not going to be a versus type conversation. That's not what this is about. The reason I was drawn to Aces initially is the simple fact that they do not integrate their ECU into the throttle body. In my mind, that has always been kind of silly. You're going to put the ECU in the most rugged conditions anywhere in the vehicle, in the throttle body, on top of a hot engine. Obviously it works, but it just never made sense to me. And the fact that there is a standalone ECU that can be put inside of the vehicle to be protected from the elements and heat, vibration, whatever, was just immediately was like, oh wow, that's really, really, immediately that was enough to make me want to look into the system. So I did a bunch of research, and I actually got hooked up with the folks at ACES, and this is what we're going with. We're going to go with this whole system. So again, we'll be doing a full unboxing on this guy, and we're going to do a step-by-step install video on this setup. We're going to talk about proper fuel system to avoid problems. We'll be talking about a bunch of cool stuff, so stay tuned for that. So for today, our main focus is going to be getting this stuff taken back out. We're going to get these tubes finish welded. We're going to get them sanded. We're going to get them painted, and we're going to start cutting some holes for a gauge panel. Let's get into it. So while the paint is drying on those tubes, I've got to figure out how much room exactly I'm playing with here to mount my gauges. Now, ideally, I want all my gauges here, but I don't know that that's going to be feasible. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to make a panel that the gauges are going to drop into, cut out a section, put the gauge in as a panel, and I'll have an independent, like an actual pigtail that can be disconnected from the back side of the gauges so that the gauges can be removed all in one. Now, as far as that goes, these switch panels should be able to do the same thing. I don't want to have to completely remove wire and take switches and stuff out to take any of this stuff out. So if I need to take this panel out, take the bars out, take the trans tunnel out, for whatever reason, I'd like to be able to undo the bolts, and basically this can fit through the hole and out the back side. This panel can come out. Obviously all of these will do the same thing. Take the shifter out. Minimal work to get this panel out. That's what I'm trying to achieve if we can. So I'm gonna take some measurements, I'm gonna draw something up, get something cut out, and at least have a placeholder for all the gauges when they get here. Man, I don't brag on that plasma table nearly enough. That thing is totally a game changer for a shop, and the good thing about that stuff is it is totally affordable nowadays. And if you're looking to step up your level of fab, there's no better way to do that. But that made quick work of that, and kind of see what we've got going on here. That dude's gonna set about right in there. Make sure gauge drops in. Gauge fits in there. I think there'll be enough space between the bezels. So next thing we're gonna do is get this guy clamped or clecoed to the panel, and then we'll get our hole cut out in that and put all this stuff back in the truck. All right, I believe the paint is dry enough on those. Gonna put back in the rig, and we've got that all cut out. So I believe we can get this all assembled and kind of mop back up. That way we can continue on with our wiring. Well, it has been a few days since we have filmed. We've been kind of waiting on some supplies to show up. I didn't have all the gauges to finish out the gauge panel. Got the rest of those guys here, and I also needed some good connectors to finish up some of the wiring. A lot of this stuff is going to use ring terminals, so I needed to order some good ones for that. Got all that stuff in, so today I'm actually going to be buttoning up. I'm going to try to get some headway on the dash wiring, and I think we're going to go ahead and route the headlight harness trunk in and the taillight harness trunk in. Hopefully we'll get to that. Did manage to get a few other little odds and ends done while we were waiting on those pieces. Flip around here. You can see we built these wheel tub covers. It was a pretty tedious process. Didn't film any of that, but you can see that we put the cross support in between those. That's that piece laying up there. We put these flanges in so that it's fully removable, and built these wheel tub covers out of aluminum. They came out all right, not terrible. I'm not super great when it comes to welding aluminum, but that actually was a pretty good project for me, and I think that came out good. Like, obviously still some holes in there for debris to blow through, but I wanted to at least keep the big chunks from getting kicked up into the truck. So got the fuel cell, put some rubber padding down so that the fuel cell isn't vibrating around on that. I'll have to make a mount for the fuel cell. But now that we've got those installed, you can see we've got a good solid place for the fuel cell. And we can actually make some mounts for that guy, and we can kind of get started on our fuel system. That is another video for another day. We do have all our provisions for an in-tank pump, got a Walboro pump, and we've got all our fancy fuel hose supplies from Ace's Fuel Injection. But yeah, today I think the main focus is going to be, I'm going to get the gauges all installed in the gauge panel, and I'm actually going to make a harness for them so that if I want to take the gauges out, literally I just unplug a plug and that whole gauge panel will come out, and then hopefully get some of the main wiring stuff done on the harness. So let's jump into it. So first thing I'm going to do is pop this gauge panel out and go ahead and get the rest of the gauges that we have installed. I need to open up my boost controller too and see what it's going to take as far as provisions for wiring. I really don't know. We'll dig into some of this crap first. Let's go ahead. Probably gonna jump in here and just start hooking stuff up, and we'll come back and give you a little explanation of what's happening. But yeah, buckle up. Get ready to watch paint dry. All right, so next part of the puzzle, I've gone ahead and pulled our main switch panel out, and this is basically going to be our key switch. So we're pretty much just going to follow this diagram here. We've got a battery feed coming into it, which is going to be jumpered between all three switches. I'm actually going to cut this lead out of here and make a heavier gauge jumper. That way there's no reduced load shared between any of these guys. I'll probably put a piece of 10 gauge in there and get that all set up. And then from there, pretty much we'll have our battery ignition. So these three will be jumpered. Our red battery wire will be tied to our, well, you can tie it to any of these upper poles. It really doesn't matter. Our accessory out wire will be here. Our starter relay wire will be there. and then our ignition on will be there. So basically what's going to happen is all three of these posts will be hot when the battery kill switch is on. That'll heat up all of these studs, and then that switch is going to turn on the ignition. That switch is going to turn on accessory, and that's going to be push to start. So I'm going to make a little jumper wire for that, get these guys terminated, and we can get rid of this little bundle of wires. Yeah. So yeah, ended up going through the bags, and man, oh man, this is the most basic harness. Like, nothing's grouped together. You pretty much pick and choose what you want, which is what I intended, but I didn't realize that like the tail light harness isn't really grouped together. You pretty much have to bundle everything the way you want it. But we've got our main trunk feeding tail lights, turn signals, headlights, turn signals in the front. Basically, our front and rear harnesses are grouped and ran through the firewalls. So we've got our rear harness, we've got our headlight harness, and for right now, really all we need on the engine side is starter wire, oil, pressure, and oh no, I do need to run another wire. I need to run a trans temp wire. Glad I thought of that. So yeah, we've got mostly everything sorted. All of our switches, so we're actually running it's an American Auto Wire turn signal switch, and it's basically a turn signal switch set up on a toggle, and it takes care of being able to integrate the brake lights and turn signals into one bulb. So instead of having to run two different bulbs in the back like you would if you were running just a toggle switch. So we're not running a typical turn signal style switch. So basically this is a turn signal switch in a toggle switch, basically is what that effectively is. So we've got our powers for that tied into the switch. We changed that switch out. We've got our wiper feed tied in. We actually changed this switch out. It's from an on-off. It's an on-off-on. And for our headlights, same deal. We've got low beam, off, high beam is how we're going to set that up. And I'm probably going to go in and tie our parking lights into this last switch. That way our parking lights aren't just tied to ignition hot. I was going to do that initially, but I don't think we are. Also got the gauge panel kind of tipped in there, and ahead and put the boost controller gauge in there. Looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So got to do a lot more hooking up, obviously. Still have this bundle to deal with. Got to route wires forward and backwards. So yeah, I don't think you guys are interested in watching me terminate wires for the rest of this video. So I think this is where we're going to call it. So coming up real soon, we are going to be getting the fuel injection stuff installed and fuel systems. Man, this thing's getting dangerous. It's getting close. So Make sure to subscribe, click the like button, leave us a comment. If you want to see more of these videos, make sure to click the bell icon for notifications. Guys and gals at home, we appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. Enjoy.